Welcome to Beyond the Pattern, Life and Leadership Unlocked. I'm your host, Bukola, keynote speaker, HR strategist, and leadership coach with over 20 years of experience supporting leaders through growth and transition. I'm also a first-generation Nigerian American. My name, Bukola, means added to the greatness in Yoruba, and this podcast is one way I live that out. We're living in a time of constant acceleration. AI, automation, and performance culture push us to go faster and do more. But speed isn't the same as wisdom, and going fast doesn't mean we're moving forward. That's why I created this space to reclaim the human side of leadership. If you want to stay connected, be sure to follow the show and hit subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you won't miss any episode when it drops every other week. Whether this is your first time listening or you've been following since day one, I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. Hey, it's a sunny day in Atlanta, finally. After weeks of rain, and I just got back from my morning run. My legs are tired, but my mind is clear. And before I fully shift into chill mode, I wanted to check in with you. Let me ask you this. Based on this past week alone, what pattern would you say you're repeating that's getting in your way? Maybe it's how you manage stress. Maybe it's how you show up under pressure. Maybe you're doing everything right on the outside, but inside you're on autopilot. Here's what I know. That pattern, it's showing up somewhere. Now look, I'm Nigerian and I was raised in New Jersey. Don't hold it against me. Slowing down does not come naturally to me. New Jersey trains you to move fast. And Lagos, the same. Even crossing the street in Nigeria can feel like the Olympics. Now I live in the Southeast, in Atlanta. And I'll be honest, the slower pace threw me off at first, but over time I adjusted. And I'm so glad I did. Because that shift, it taught me something I didn't know I needed. And that's space. Space to listen. Space to lead differently. And space to heal. And that's what today's episode is about, the first shift in my shift framework. S stands for slow down and spot the pattern. Because before we can change anything, we've got to name it. Let me take you inside a coaching moment with someone I used to work with. I'll call him James for confidentiality. James was sharp, reliable. Everyone knew him as a get-it-done kind of leader. But one day, he came to me quietly, a little frustrated, honestly, and said, I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. I've hit every target. I keep the team afloat, but I still keep getting passed over for promotions. Now, James wasn't the emotional type. He kept things tight, professional, buttoned up. So for him to open up at all, I knew he was at a crossroads. He didn't want a pep talk. He wanted something to change and fast. So I asked him, what do you think is getting in your way, James? He paused, then said, honestly, I think it's politics. I'm not flashy. I just do the work. And that's where our coaching started. Because here's the thing. James was right about one thing. He did do the work. But when I started observing him and listening more closely, I noticed some patterns, some subtle ones. The kind of patterns leaders often miss in themselves. For example, James didn't realize how much his team feared making mistakes around him. He was so focused on performance that when someone slipped up, he'd get quiet and cold. Not disrespectful, just withdrawn, little flavor. The room would shift. People would shut down, and slowly, he was building a culture of silence without meaning to. Turnover started to creep in, and while James thought it was just people chasing new roles or not being cut out for the work, there was more going on beneath the surface. So he slowed things down. I said, James, let's take politics off the table for a minute. Tell me, how does your team feel when things go wrong? He looked confused at first, then said, I don't know, probably like they need to fix it fast. Okay, I said. And how do you respond when things go wrong? That's when he got quiet. Because he realized he didn't respond. not emotionally at least. He just turned into a machine. All action, no conversation. Then I asked him directly, where did that opinion that you can't make mistakes come from? And that's when it shifted. I could tell his wheels were turning. He said, I wasn't raised to talk about feelings, Bukola, especially not at work. You get the job done. He started talking about his upbringing, how his father never missed work, never showed weakness, always led with strength. He said, in my house, if you cried, you better be bleeding. We both smiled a little, but you could feel the weight of it. This wasn't just a work habit. This was a pattern that came from way back. One that helped him survive, but wasn't helping him lead today. So I offered this. What if strength isn't silence? What if real leadership is creating space where your team doesn't have to fear you to respect you? It took time, and we didn't fix it in one session. James and I went on to meeting multiple times, but James started experimenting. He started opening up, opening his mind to trying new things. He asked his team how they were doing before diving into metrics. He owned his own mistakes. He said things like, I don't have the answer yet, without it feeling like failure. And slowly things shifted. One of his newer team members pulled him aside and said, James, I've never had a boss own their part like that. It really made me want to show up stronger. That was the win. Not a title, not a performance award. It was influence, it was trust, it was a pattern interrupted. Let me pause here because this is where real change starts. Change doesn't always start from breakdown. Sometimes it starts with insight. But insight requires that we slow down long enough to see ourselves clearly. And if we bring a little neuroscience into this, trust me, this matters. The brain is wired to protect us through familiarity. The brain wants to keep us safe. Even if a pattern isn't helping us anymore, the brain will keep choosing it just because it's familiar. There's a phrase I love to use when I teach this. The brain loves what's familiar, not necessarily what's effective. So to shift the brain, truly shift, we have to be intentional. That's why I created the shift framework. The S, the first step, stands for slow down and spot the pattern. H stands for hear the lesson and see the impact. And then I stands for investigate the pattern, investigate the impact even more. And then F is find new ways forward. And then T is try the shift again and again to transform. This isn't fluff. This is brain training. When we pause, we create enough space between the trigger and the response to choose something new. Say that with me. The brain loves what's familiar, not necessarily what's effective. I want you to say it with me. Yes, you're probably by yourself somewhere with headphones. Maybe people are watching you, so what? Say it with me. The brain loves what's familiar, not necessarily what's effective. The brain loves what's familiar, not necessarily what's effective. The brain loves what's familiar, not necessarily what's effective. Anyway, so let's choose effectiveness. Let's choose clarity. Let's choose growth. Okay? And I have another example. Let me bring it closer to home for you, to a story from my own personal leadership journey. There was a time I was hired into a senior recruiting role by leaders I had worked with before. So they were building something ambitious, a startup division inside a global company. And they trusted me to help lead the transformation. I brought in a strong team, including Amanda, one of the best recruiters I'd ever worked with. On day one, we did things right. We aligned on the process. We built in guardrails. We talked about how we'd work together and where we'd need to stay close. But the truth, the speed at which the company was moving was so intense, it started to swallow those check-ins. And because I could keep up with the pressure from the executive team, I expected my team to do the same. Fast, fast, fast. Amanda pulled me aside one day and said, Bukola, I can run with the best of them, but this pace isn't sustainable. If we're going to keep growing, something has to shift. She was right. Even though we had set up alignment at the beginning, it wasn't enough. We needed more space to process, more time to build relationships, more room to check in as we evolved. It was a startup. Because recruiting isn't just about filling jobs. It's about building trust with candidates, with hiring managers, sometimes even spouses. And when you don't pause to align, you risk burnout, you risk rework, and worse, you risk disconnection. So we changed things. We built in more checkpoints. We brought recruiting into strategy conversations earlier. We took the time to share best practices, even across different regions and teams, and our results improved because we weren't just reacting, we were leading with intention. But here's where it got even more nuanced. I'd grown up and worked in the Northeast where people want to see your competence first. It's fast paced. If you can do the job, they'll work with you. If you can't, they won't bother with pleasantries. But in the South and in many other regions, relationships come first. People want to know who you are before they get to how you work. And here's the thing, I understood that, but not everyone on the team did. And even though we were running fast, we were missing opportunities to build trust with leaders who want a slower, more relational approach. That pace, that pressure, it had become a pattern. And the pattern was getting in the way. So part of our shift wasn't just about recruiting operations. It was about slowing down enough to listen to the culture we were creating. It was a startup. We had to make sure we listened to the leaders, to the human dynamics we were trying to influence. And that made all the difference. So let's break this down. James didn't set out to burn out his team, and I didn't intend to move too fast for mine. But what could have shifted earlier? Here are 4 things we both learned. Build in reflection before things break. Don't wait for turnover or burnout. Make check-ins part of your rhythm. That's 1. 2 is ask more questions early. What's working? Where might it be missing something? 3, define success with your team, not just for them. Shared expectations, reduce friction. 4, treat outcomes as data, not identity. The way people feel is just as important as what gets done. Leadership isn't just about holding things together. It's about creating enough space for people to grow, including you. So let's move to the recap. We're going to bring this home. James realized his silence was being read as judgment. Amanda helped me see that speed doesn't always mean success. And me, I'm still learning to pause when Jersey's in the building, all day, every day. And because the work never ends, we can choose how we show up for it. Here's your homework. Find one moment this week, just one, to slow down. Then ask yourself one of these. What am I feeling right now and why? What am I about to do on autopilot? What do I need more of? Control or connection? Am I leading with urgency or with intention? That's it. One pause, one pattern, one new possibility. And if you want accountability, tag me or DM me what you noticed. I'll be right there celebrating your shift with you because this isn't about doing more. It's about doing it on purpose. Let's take that step together. Have a good week, everybody. Thanks for listening. If this episode resonated, I'd love to hear from you. You can text or leave a voicemail at 404-828-0279. That's 404-828-0279. Or you can visit me at bukolaogantala.com to send in a question, share your story, or explore coaching and speaking services. Whether you're leading a team or learning to lead yourself, I'm honored to be on this journey with you. And if you haven't already, hit follow or subscribe so we can keep growing together.